Hello. Today we're going to be talking about something very important that's huge for this country and huge around the world, and that's immigration. Our group designed a PowerPoint talking about the key factors of immigration in the United States and some of the differences and types of immigration, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the first thing we have is migration. So human migration is the movement of people from one place in the world to another. There are multiple different types of migration. The United States is actually built off of immigration, and we have millions of immigrants, roughly 45 million immigrants living in the United States currently, and a lot of people say the United States was built off immigration, which it was, and there are reasons why human migration happens. There are some reasons, but the three main reasons that we can see around the world are usually wars, climate, and disasters cause people to move from one place to another in this world. Usually, go find a better place because these things are happening. Currently, there's a lot of movements going around about immigration in the United States and things like that. There's a lot of rules and regulations going on. It's a huge topic right now that we'll actually talk about what the administrations do for migration. There are actually two types of immigration. There's immigration and immigration. So immigration, I'm going to be talking about first. So those people are called immigrants. Immigrants is a person who has moved to another country, usually for permanent residence. So they move from one place to another, but they are usually moving there to live, and that can be caused from like the three things I talked about earlier, or just other things, wanting a better life in general, but they'll move there to permanently live. Immigration is an act of immigrating, or the act of moving to another country. So it's like me just moving somewhere else, and then so just think about that's moving in, and the difference is with immigration is an immigrant is someone who leaves a country or region, just in general. So they just leave the country, usually because of climate, war, and other things, or just disasters. Immigration is the act of leaving one's own country to settle permanently in another, or like moving abroad. So they're kind of similar in ways, and they're kind of different in ways, and so immigration, think about as moving in. Immigration is basically leaving. Like, I'm just gonna leave that area because something's happening. The United States is a huge center for immigration. We have a lot of people moving into this country, legally and illegally. There's a lot of debate going on whether there's just a lot of strict policies going on and things. It's a huge topic in the news right now. So we're going to basically be talking about in this PowerPoint just different policies that administrations had previously, and what worked, what didn't work, what were their weaknesses, strengths, and then we're going to be talking about the current administration that we have right now, and then major laws coming in, just reform and things like that that we'll be talking about, and that's been really huge in the news lately. They're going to be talking about the rest of the people just on just different things like that, court hearings and different things like that. And then we're also going to be talking about current issues that have to do with immigration, like COVID-19 and things like that that are kind of changing the way we see immigration in the United States and around the world. Then we're going to be talking about, just things like that have to do with immigration. So things that have to do with immigration, like healthcare, taxes, things like that'll have to do with it. And yeah, they'll be talking about that later. Thank you.
Factors that influence immigration patterns include conflict within the country, economic depression, and religious persecutions. People flee their country when war is occurring. When this happens, people are then considered refugees after leaving their country. During the Vietnam War, there was an influx in Vietnamese people in the United States. This was due to the fall of Saigon. After the fall of Saigon, a lot of people were left without homes, and many were fearing the new communist government that was about to take over. Many countries face economic downturns. Due to this, immigrants leave their nation to escape poverty and the lack of job opportunities. Oftentimes, a lot of people are denied jobs due to them not being able to sustain themselves properly. Others may choose to leave their countries due to racial discrimination or discrimination against their religion. Most of the time, these people will flee to a country where they are more accepting of their religion. Most of the time, in the original countries where they flee from, they often discriminate them for their race and don't let them pick up certain jobs due to their race or religion, depending on what country and what they're mainly discriminating against. Not only you can tell there is a theme of self-preservation. Immigration is a result of people trying to survive and sustain themselves. Oftentimes not having a choice of what to do but to break the law and try to flee to another country most of the time. Escaping war, poverty, and discrimination should be emphasized whether someone is with or against immigration.
In history, as of today, the Clinton administration has made the strongest dedication to fighting illegal immigration. In 1996, Bill Clinton signed an immigration bill called the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. This overhauled immigration enforcement in the United States and laid foundation for the enormous deportation machine that exists today. This law essentially established the immigration enforcement that is known today, a persistent and plausible threat to millions of immigrants. The goal was to increase punishments on immigrants who had abused the United States law in some way, regardless if they were legal or not. Ever since this bill was put in place, it is easier to deport people and it is much harder for unauthorized immigrants to become legal. Although this bill was supposed to decrease the number of unauthorized immigrants from entering the country, the year that IRA passed, there was 5 million people that were unauthorized, and in 2006, that number jumped to 12 million. Another significant bill that was passed during Bill Clinton's presidency and after the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995 is the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, also known as AEDPA. It is controversial due to the changes of law of habeas corpus in the United States. The core of this law is a provision that states that even when a state court misuses the Constitution, a defendant cannot automatically have their day in federal court. As an alternative, they must prove that the decision of the court was either contrary to what the Supreme Court had decided as federal law or that the verdict was unreasonably applied. Together, the AEDPA and IRA have substantially increased the possible penalties faced by both immigrants with and without proper immigration status. These laws have increased the number of crimes that immigrants can be deported for and made the deportation eligibility retroactive. Not only that, but these laws also allowed undocumented immigrants detained within 100 miles of the United States border to be deported without contending their cases before an immigration judge. The election of President George W. Bush in 2000 marked a transition in the United States immigration policy. As said by George W. Bush, at its core, immigration is a sign of a confident and successful nation. Immigrants' talent and hard work and love of freedom have helped us become the leader of the world. Bush is in support of immigrants but wants them to become part of the country legally. President Bush believes that America can currently be economically dynamic, lawful, and a welcoming society. For immigration to be reformed, all elements of the problem must be addressed or it will not work. These elements include the United States securing its borders, and they would do this by sending approximately 6,000 National Guard members to the southern border in order to supplement the increasing number of border patrol. Not only that, but the president has a secure border initiative that is aimed at securing the United States borders and decreasing illegal immigration. The administration also effectively ended the catch and release for illegal aliens that are detained at the borders. They would also be holding employers accountable for the workers they hire. Also, creating a temporary worker program to secure borders. The temporary worker program would establish that American workers must be given priority over guest workers. The program must only be temporary, and participation should fluctuate along with the market conditions. Bringing undocumented workers already in the country out of the shadows. The president believes that a rational middle ground between a program of automatic amnesty and a program of mass deportation can be met. He would enforce this by no amnesty. After paying a penalty, undocumented workers must pay their taxes, learn English, pass a background check, as well as holding a job for a certain amount of years before they would be eligible to be considered for a status of legalization. Any undocumented worker seeking citizenship must wait their turn at the back of the line. And lastly, promoting assimilation into the society by teaching new immigrants English and American values. This is enforced because those who are swearing an oath of citizenship are doing more than just completing a legal process. They're making a lifelong pledge to support the laws and values of America. In 2007, George W. Bush attempted to pass the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act of 2007, also known as CIR. This bill stated that it would provide 12 million undocumented immigrants that are residing in the United States with legal status and a path to citizenship. Although this bill seemed like a good solution to some people, it did not pass. Even with the support of some Americans, many others opposed providing a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, since they saw it as a reward for them disregarding the laws of the United States. And it was not long before he continued losing support. Within the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act of 2007, this bill would have increased the enforcement of the United States-Mexico border. It would have also increased the number of Border Patrol agents by adding 20,000 and also by adding 370 miles of fencing. An act within this bill is the Secure the Fence Act of 2006. This act would authorize the constructions of hundreds of miles of additional fencing along the southern border, authorize more vehicle barriers, checkpoints, and lighting to help prevent people from entering our country illegally. And finally, it would authorize the Department of Homeland Security to increase the use of advanced technology, such as satellites, cameras, and unmanned aerial vehicles, to reinforce our infrastructure at the border. This act is a significant step forward in our nation's endeavors to manage the borders and reform the United States immigration system.
President Obama's approach to immigration enforcement was two different approaches. One for those caught living near the border and the other for immigrants found living illegally in the interior. Also, how long an immigrant had been in the United States made a difference as well. President Obama's first major act on immigration came in August of 2012. The president announced an executive order entitled Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, which resulted in renewable 2-year grants of protection from deportation and work permits and identity documents for approximately 700,000 illegal aliens who arrived in the country as children. Like others before it, the Obama administration said it did not have the resources or the desire to deport millions of immigrants whose only crime was entering the country illegally. Therefore, it focused its enforcement efforts on specific targets: those caught near the border, and those who've committed crimes, and those who appear to have arrived in 2014 or later. President Obama announced an additional executive order entitled Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, or DAPA, in November 2014. This would have granted renewable work permits and exemption from deportation to illegal aliens with children who are American citizens or lawful permanent residents. Approximately 3.6 million aliens would have been eligible. However, multiple states filed lawsuits against the federal government in temporary order in February of 2015 and blocked DAPA from going into effect while the lawsuits proceeded. Deportations increased in each of the first 4 years of President Obama's term in office, topping 400,000 in fiscal year 2012. Obama oversaw more deportations than George W. Bush did, just as Bush oversaw more than Bill Clinton did. Deportations peaked in 2012, but it declined in each of the 3 years since then, dropping to almost 200,000 in 2015. And here's a chart showing the comparison between Bush and Obama's deportations from the U.S. between 2002 and 2013. And as you can see in 2012, that's the highest, which is during Obama's term, because Obama is the purple and then Bush is the light blue. Now it's time for Trump's immigration policy. So on the campaign trail, Trump made a wide range of promises regarding immigration. Among those promises included building a border wall and have Mexico pay for it, deporting all illegal aliens, defund sanctuary cities, ban Muslims from entering the United States, limit illegal immigration, and triple the number of ICE agents. After inauguration, President Trump made varying degrees of progress on his campaign trail immigration pledges. In 2017, he signed several executive orders. He signed a travel ban which restricted admission of the citizens of what was ultimately 7 countries: Libya, Iran, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, North Korea, and Venezuela. Chad was included in the final executive order, but removed from the list the following year, banning over 135 million potential immigrants and non-immigrant visitors. And to continue on that, Trump also repealed DAPA in June. And then lastly, in September, he announced plans to phase out DACA, making the potential recipients eligible for deportation. And then here is a chart showing the average daily population of immigrant detainees. It's comparing Trump, Obama, Bush, and Clinton. And as you can see, on October 20th of 2018, he detained the most out of any other president before him, with 631,000 immigrants.
Immigration reform is a term used to refer to the changes or attempts to change immigration laws. Immigration reform goes back many, many years in our country and has changed a lot. For example, according to History.com, in March 1790, Congress passed the first law stating who could be granted U.S. citizenship. It allowed any free white person of good character that has lived in the United States for 2 years or longer to apply for citizenship. Nowadays, no one would expect this type of law to be passed. Someone being granted citizenship just because they're white and have good character would not go by smoothly today. Recently, immigration reform has been getting stricter because of the increasing amount of illegal immigrants entering the U.S. This has made it much more harder for people to get visas to come to the U.S. The last time legislators came close to notable immigration reform was in 2013, when the Democratic-led Senate passed a bill that would have provided a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. However, the bill did not receive a vote in the Republican-controlled House of Representatives. There are many immigration advocacy groups that have been trying to attempt to influence immigration reform. There are also a lot of protests regarding immigration reform to make changes, especially recently because of the detention centers at the southern border. One immigration advocacy group is National Immigrant Justice Center, based in Chicago, Illinois. This group provides comprehensive legal services to low-income immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Detention centers on the southern border have been found to be denying children the right to soap, toothbrushes, and other sanitary products. However, in August of 2019, the federal court ruled that the government must provide detained migrant children with basic hygiene supplies such as toothbrushes and sleeping mats. And it's a major victory for children in federal immigration custody, says Elora Mukherjee, one of the lawyers who visited the Clint facility. In addition to the horrible conditions that immigrant children face in detention centers, they are being forced to represent themselves in court. Many of these children are really young and don't understand why their families fled their home country to come to the U.S. And these situations are why we have immigration advocacy groups that fight for immigration reform, and why immigration reform is something that continues to change over the years. Many people believe that the COVID-19 pandemic should be a wake-up call for immigration reform because of all the undocumented people in the country that don't have access to health care. Currently, there are estimated 11 to 12 million undocumented people in the country, and their legal status is keeping them from coming forward to receive medical care or health care if they have any symptoms of COVID-19, and this is making the COVID-19 situation harder to get under control. Now, what type of immigration reform might we see in the future if Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden wins the election? Joe Biden says he plans to end the diversion of funding from the military to build onto the wall on the Mexican border, and he would make it a top priority to reunite any children still separated from their families. Biden says he will also revoke the decision to terminate the DACA program and strengthen protections for Dreamers. Lastly, Biden has promised to rescind the bans placed on mostly Muslim countries.